And it's almost 6:10. No, 6:03. Okay, so everything's in order? We're recording? Okay. I call to order the meeting of. Can you hear me now? Not yet?
I can hear you.
Testing.
I don't think any of them are working.
No, they're not.
Hello, hello. Got it?
Testing. Okay.
Okay, good. So I call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Mansfield, Connecticut, September 18th, 2023 at 6:04 PM. Members present are Aho, Corsi, Chandy, DeVivo, Bertoni, Ross, Tomeko, Wooch, and Ward. Bill has brought to my attention a major problem with the minutes, so we're going to approve the minutes next time.
I believe that Ward is seated for absent members.
Oh, that's right. Ward is seated for absent member Cooley. We can't start the public hearing until 6:10. So if someone would like to make a motion to move new business up to the front, we can do that while we're waiting.
DeVivo would like to move that we move the new business before the old business. Before public hearing,
Before public
sorry.
Okay. Moved by DeVivo.
Second by
Chandy.
Chandy.
All in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, and the new business is the appointment to the design review panel.
Yes, as you know, you have a 5-member design review panel, and currently you have three members. We've been looking for members to fill. And Mr. Matthew Varley, who is a fairly new resident but is an architect, has asked to serve. And so if you agree that he should serve, there's a motion before you.
Probably on the last page.
Yeah, I can put that forward. I, Chandy, move to appoint Matthew Varley to the design review panel for 2-year terms for a 2-year term ending September 18th, 2025.
Okay. Moved by Chandy.
DeVivo second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. The other new business is a referral of construction of a sewer extension. And we need to notify the town that we're in favor of sewer.
Right, so it's an 824 referral.
Okay.
So it's a statutory referral, and anytime a municipal agency is doing major work, and of which sewer extension as well as pedestrian improvements on South Eagleville Road qualify, you have to document on the record that it's consistent with the plan of conservation and development. So I did in a memo, there are a few goals 7.1, 9.2, and 9.1 that shows that both the pedestrian improvements and the sewer extension are consistent with the POCD.
Okay. If someone would like to put that motion forward.
Which moves to notify the town council that the sewerage main extensions and pedestrian safety improvements between the Separatist and Storrs Road intersections are consistent with Mansfield's plan of conservation and development.
Moved by Wooch.
Second by DeVivo.
Okay. Any discussion? Oh, Vera, yes, you have your hand up? Yeah. Or it's just up for the vote. Okay. You're muted and your hand is artificially up, whatever that means.
Here,
Okay, now we can hear you.
nope, we can't.
No?
Okay, I thought you called for a vote.
Okay. Now I'm calling for a vote. Okay, all in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, that's our new business, so we can go. Are we up to 6:10 yet? We have to wait 1 minute.
I think I could probably read the guidelines for
Yes.
the public hearing
Yes.
to
Yeah.
kill a minute or two?
Yeah, you should do that.
Okay. All right. So the purpose of tonight's hearing is to receive relevant information about the proposed application from the public. Order and decorum shall be maintained at all times during the hearing. The commission reserves the right to adjourn the hearing to another date and time should the discussion become unruly and unmanageable. Given the hybrid format, we ask that everyone bear with us if we encounter any glitches. If we are unable to overcome technical issues and/or the commission is having difficulty understanding the information presented in this format, the hearing will be continued to another meeting. Order of presentations tonight will be that of the applicant, and then public comment in support, public comment in opposition, and public comment that is undetermined or requests for additional information. After that, the applicant will then have an opportunity to respond. When addressing the commission, please state your name and address and any party, group, or organization you represent. Limit your comments to the subject of the public hearing. Avoid repetition where possible. Summarize reports and letters that are submitted to the commission rather than reading them aloud. All written information is copied and distributed to members. Direct all questions and comments to the chair. Do not attempt to engage in dialogue with members of the commission, staff, or other parties to the hearing. Speak clearly to ensure your comments are audible to members of the public watching from home and are recorded. Commission members may ask questions of anyone providing testimony, but will not discuss the relative merits of the application until the hearing is closed. Failure to abide by these policies and procedures may result in a muting of your microphone or in dismissal from the hearing. Instructions on how to participate in the public hearing are listed on the agenda. For those who would like to call in, please call 1-929-205-6099 and enter the following meeting ID 816-3612-1977 and the following passcode 878248.
Okay, thank you very much. So the public hearing is open at 6:11 PM. It's a special permit application of Husky Housing LLC for a mixed-use development known as The Hub at Mansfield on 4 parcels located at 22 and 28 to 32 King Hill Road and 125 and 134 North Eagleville Road. Members present are Ahua Corsi, Chandy, DeVivo for Tony Ross, Tomeko Wooch, and Ward, who is seated for absent member Cooley. Do we have a public notice that we need to read or?
Mr. Chair, the public notice was the hearing opened on September 5th. So this is a continued public
right.
hearing.
Okay, we're continuing. Okay. And so the applicant can speak.
I just wanted to note a couple things for the record. And the first is in your last packet, I had added the abutters notifications indicating that the applicant has in fact notified the abutters. This didn't transfer, but they have notified the abutters. And late this afternoon, I did get a letter, an email from the Housing Authority, and that has also been uploaded to your packet. And I also wanted to include my memo of September 14th, which I think are also noted in my memo. So with that, I think we can turn it to the applicant, but we do need to make sure that they share the screen. We have to have them share their screen. So we may have you tee up your presentation, then we'll make sure that this screen is shared and so the public can view it as well. So Zoom to show.
There we go.
Alright.
All right, great. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Tom Cody. I'm an attorney at the firm of Robinson and Cole. Our office is in Hartford at 280 Trumbull Street. And I am here on behalf of the applicant, Will Husky Housing LLC. Seated with me is Andy Savoy. He's Vice President of Development with Core Spaces. Also with us in the front row is Eric Wright, Vice President of Construction for Wilmerite Construction. Also, other members of our team, including Alyssa Galina and Dan Clary with Langen Engineering. And we have a couple of other members of our professional team who are joining us remotely this evening. A couple of them have parts in our presentation. We'll cut to them when we get to that. And there are other members of our team that are available for questions if that should be needed. So our presentation this evening, I'll give a brief introduction to the application. Andy will then explain the key development objectives for the project. He'll run through the site plan, describe the parking, the architectural design, project amenities, and the anticipated operations of the project. We'll then hear from three professionals from Langen Engineering. Tim O'Neill, a professional engineer, will describe for you some of the key engineering aspects of the project, particularly stormwater management and utility service to the project. Dan Clary will review the traffic, and Kristen Mitchell will describe the landscape plan for the application. At the conclusion, I will wrap up with a summary of the application and highlight consistency with the regulations. Can you advance the slide? So this is an application that includes 4 parcels of property. 3 of those parcels we describe as Site A, which is on the southern side of North Eagleville Road, between North Eagleville and King Hill Road. Site A, you can see just one brief photo of it is down on the bottom left of your screen. That's where the Subway and the Sam's Food Store and the liquor store are located. Site B is located on the north side of North Eagleville Road. That is a single parcel of record, and you can see one photo of that site on the lower right of this slide, where the Huskies Tavern is located in a commercial building and parking, which cover most of Site B. Site B is about 1.56 acres in size, and Site A is 2.09 acres in size. The applicant, Will Husky Housing LLC, is under contract to purchase all 4 of the parcels included in the application. And in summary, this redevelopment would create a new mixed-use community consisting of residential, group dwelling uses, and commercial uses, retail and restaurant type uses. And that would be a significant enhancement to these 2 larger parcels on either side of the road. Now, earlier this year, Wilmerite submitted a wetland permit application for a group dwelling project that included only a portion of Site A. And you might recall this, the commission, the Wetland Commission, you sitting as the Wetland Commission, reviewed this in February and March. That was project application was approved in March, but again, it only included 2 of the 4 parcels. After that approval, Wilmerite teamed up with Core Spaces to think of a project that would include 2 additional parcels of land, the 2 known as 125 and 134 North Eagleville Road. They were brought under contract, added to the property, And design was then initiated for this larger project consisting of both sides of the road. We submitted an inland wetlands permit application to you for this revised project. It went through a very thorough peer review. We had a public hearing here on August 7th, and the application was approved unanimously on September the 5th. Now, the project site is zoned PB4, and we've shown you on this slide an excerpt of the zoning map. And what's particularly noteworthy, I think, from looking at this portion of the zoning map is that you can see that there is just a very small amount of PB4 land in town. And in fact, the 4 parcels included in this application are virtually all of the PB4 land in the town. There's one other parcel privately owned. There's some land owned by the state of Connecticut, but suffice to say that this is really the only significant size parcels that are zoned PB4. Now, PB4 is unique in the zoning regulations because it is one of only 3 districts where the group dwelling type of land use is permitted with special permit approval. The other 2 districts include the institutional district, which is largely made up of Yukon land and other state-owned land, and the mixed-use center transitional district. So group dwelling, for all intents and purposes, is principally a use that you would see in only the PB4 zoning district. And the group dwelling land use is different in some important ways from multifamily land use category. Group dwelling is defined in the zoning regulations as the residential occupancy of a dwelling by 4 or more unrelated persons where each individual or pair of individuals has the exclusive right of occupancy of a bedroom. Now, on the other hand, multifamily residences are defined with reference to dwelling units for occupancy by a single family. So while the traditional definition of multifamily is focused on family, the group dwelling land use type is not, because it's not meant for the family category of land use. It is the exclusive use of a bedroom. Now, in a few minutes, Andy is going to go through the site plan. He's going to sort of give you some more detail about how the group dwelling as a land use type is implemented. What are the features of this project that make it appropriate for and unique to the group dwelling land use? Now, the applicants and our professional team have met with town staff several times. We've had peer reviews conducted by Weston and Sampson and Ty and Bond. Those occurred during both the original wetland permit as well as the more recent wetland permit application. We've met with the Conservation Commission, the Affordable Housing Committee, the Design Review Panel, the Economic Development Commission, the Traffic Authority, and the Water System Advisory Committee. We've met with all of these groups over the past several months, and we will refer to them as appropriate during our presentation this evening. We also note that the zoning aspects of this application have also been peer reviewed by Weston and Sampson, which is the commission's selected consultant. And so as a result of all of the input that we have received, we have made a number of changes to the plans over the last couple of months. And we have submitted recently some minor revisions that incorporate suggestions and comments from the peer review. So that's a summary of sort of where we have been to date. And at this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to Andy Savoy to take you through the site plan and the project itself.
Thank you, sir.
So as Tom mentioned, my name's Andy Savoy. I'm with a company called Core Spaces. We're based out of Chicago, Illinois. And we have kind of emerged as one of the nation's leading student housing developers. We develop student-focused residential buildings, privately owned. And we've been doing so for about a decade. And so over the past decade, we've built or acquired over 30,000 beds of this type of real estate. And we have about 35,000 beds in the pipeline. So that's who Core Spaces is. You'll see a co-developer, Wilmer Wright, on the other side of the screen. That's Eric Wright behind me. He's been involved with this deal for several years. And so Core Spaces was brought in earlier this year to actually look at it. And so we're the basically co-developers that are behind Will Husky Housing. You'll see other members of our team in the middle. We have Langen Engineering. As Tom mentioned, there are a few folks on both behind me and on the Zoom, which I will be, I guess, punting to whenever it's time. We have our design architect, Antunovich Associates. I believe Brian Gaffney is on the line. They have been handling design for us. They're also based out of Chicago. And then we have Mr. Cody here and also the architect of record, Newman. And so those are kind of the involved parties. You see a few photos of some of the other projects we've done around the country at the bottom of the page there. One in Champaign, Illinois, one in Blacksburg, Virginia Tech. And then the other two are two Wilmer Wright's former projects. So both very active developers with more than 10 years of experience. And what I wanted to do before getting into the specifics of the project is just to review what our business model is, because it's not common in most parts of the country. It's really select markets where you can find this type of real estate. So we're basically a privately owned dorm. And so Core Spaces hunts for great real estate adjacent to campus, but not on campus, to build Class A student housing product on it. And so what makes this different from regular housing? You know, our unit mix is typically larger units, 4-bedroom units, 5-bedroom units. Sometimes there's 2 occupants per bedroom, and all the leases are by the bedroom and not by the unit. So with a lease, you would get your own bedroom, an individually locking bedroom door. Sometimes there's an ensuite bathroom. And so in a 4-bedroom unit, the 4 occupants would have 4 different leases with 4 different guarantees. So all the leases are by the bed. All of the leases roll at the same time, so they coincide with the academic year. All start in mid-August and end at the end of July, with a 2-week period during which we turn over the entire building. And so move-ins typically occur all at once. So everybody moves in at the same time and moves out at the same time. All the units are fully furnished, so they're really designed for people who are moving in without any furniture, just clothes and books. And then we have a very specialized amenity program that has a high amount of square footage dedicated to study areas. So it's a very specifically focused type of product that we develop. Core Spaces also manages its projects. And so you can see on the map all the places we've developed. The blue ones we've sold, the red ones we own, and we typically own our projects and are the property manager for them. So you can see a few other examples of projects to the right, Hub Tampa, and a few others. The brand name of our kind of product is the Hub. So everywhere we go, we call the building the Hub, and then wherever it is. So that's why we're talking about Hub Mansfield here. So I'm here to run you through this project. And as Tom went through earlier, there's 2 sites, one south of Eagleville Road, one north of Eagleville Road. Site south of North Eagleville Road is Site A. The site north of North Eagleville Road is Site B, and you can kind of see how those buildings will be kind of seen from a bird's eye view there. They're similar to size buildings, so altogether it's 450 units of student housing. That's 215 units in Site A, 235 units in Site B. And in terms of bedrooms, that's 1,187 bedrooms total. So It's, site B is slightly larger, but they are roughly the same size, split evenly between the south side and the north side of the street. There's also there's 549 parking spaces. So each of these buildings would be 5 levels of kind of frame construction that sits on top of a concrete parking structure where there would be enclosed covered parking spaces accessible from North Eagleville Road. And so there's 549 of those spaces. There's also about 14,000 square feet of retail that line either side of North Eagleville Road. And so I'm going to run you through the plans first, and then we can take a look at the elevations and perspectives. And then I'm going to run you through a few of the density bonuses and parking reductions that we're claiming and why we think that that's the correct thing to do. So the first site I'm going to go through is Site A. That's the site on the south side of Eagleville Road. And this site has something like 30 feet of vertical drop from King Hill Road, which is on the south side of the site, to North Eagleville Road, which is on the north side of the site. So it's a very challenging site to design, or it was a very challenging site to design, just given that there's such a difference in elevation between the two sides of the site. So what you're looking at is the lowest level of Site A, and it shows a few things. You'll see a large orange box facing Eagleville Road, and so that is the new location of Husky's Tavern. So that is a retail use. You'll see a few other retail uses facing Eagleville Road in an orange color. The red room would be our secondary lobby for our student housing use, and more on that in the next slide where you'll see our main lobby. And then to the right of that is our main vehicular entrance from Eagleville Road. So that's where trash will be picked up, and that's where the public parking entrance would be from Eagleville Road. And so that is at the top right corner of the plan where you see those two arrows pointing in and out of the deck. So the blue area is parking deck that's kind of built into the side of the hill. And I'm going to go to the next slide now. And this shows the level above that. So this level actually connects at grade with King Hill Road. And you see our main lobby facing King Hill Road. So that entire red area is the main lobby. You'll see a few elevators highlighted in orange, and the northernmost elevator, I wonder if I can't point. The northernmost elevator actually connects down to the lower level. So someone could actually enter the lobby, the small lobby off Eagleville Road, and get into an elevator that would then bring them to the main lobby one level above. And so we basically have two lobbies, one to address Eagleville Road and one to address King Hill Road, one facing north, one facing south. You see the parking deck does continue up. It's basically a continuously ramped parking structure, but along Eagleville Road, we've arranged residential units to basically hide the exterior of the parking structure from Eagleville Road. So if you look at the building from Eagleville Road, you won't see the side of a parking deck. As we go up the building, this is the next level up. It takes the shape of a W, and we've made conscious choices to try to develop a rhythm. You know, the site is something like 400 feet wide, so we wanted to break that into chunks so that you're not looking at this large wall. And so along the south, you can see the way the units are expressed creates kind of a rhythm. The green areas are exterior terraces, and you'll see this better in elevation and in the perspectives that I'm about to show you. So this is the second level above Eagleville Road, where there's actually access to roof terraces that are on top of the parking deck. As we move up the building steps back from Eagleville Road, so that you're never looking at a piece of the building that's 75 feet tall, but it's kind of stepping back as the hill rolls back. And then the top floor, you'll see this kind of beige color to the right. That's a roof top terrace. So that's actually open to the sky at that point. And so that's a common amenity area also available to all the residents. These are elevations that show how the building looks from all sides. The top, you'll see where, you know, our main retail frontage, this that amount of glass at the bottom of the building being where Husky's Tavern is being relocated. And then at the bottom of the page, you can kind of see our main entrance, which is facing King Hill Road. And we've used some material expression there to create a kind of a special corner for this entry condition. These always look better in 3D. And so this is a view from Eagleville Road, and it's looking west. That's our main vehicular entrance to the building. So that's where most cars would be pulling out from Eagleville Road into the parking deck. And then further down the street, you see our lobby and other retail uses there. You see that we've articulated the building as these residential boxes that sit on top of this podium. And so you have this black brick podium with these residential boxes kind of arranged on top of it. This is the other side of the project, a view from King Hill Road, where you see kind of the main entry sequence and that moment of identity for the building. I'm not sure. There is a dotted red line up at the top of the building. That's just to indicate an area we were thinking about for signage. But basically a double-story lobby that looks out over King Hill Road. It's a main entry area. Site B on the other side of the street, laid out somewhat similarly. There's also about 2 stories of grade change, sloping upward from south to north. So when you're at Eagleville Road, you are 2 stories below where you would be if you were standing on the northern edge of the property line. And so we treat this condition a similar way. We have a structured parking deck built into the side of the hill. The image on the left is the lowest level. We've arranged some retail space along Eagleville Road. And then you can see a plan cut there where basically the bottom right portion of the building is underground because the site actually slopes up from left to right there as well. Looking at the right side, this is the main residential entry, that red area being the lobby and amenity space for the project. And so there is about one story of slope between left and right. And so you would actually enter from the right corner closest to campus. The third level is all parking with a cutout to make that lobby a double-story space. So that gets to be something like a 20-foot clear space in that red area below. And then the typical residential floor starts, which is a figure 8 type floor that similarly starts to set back when you get up to the taller levels of it in the same direction as the grade is sloping. And so you have another kind of amenity area on the highest level there. We're showing the red area. All the blue is units, and we have a variety of units, but if you look at them, they're mostly 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom units. We have some units that are 2 bedrooms with 4 beds. So it's high density student housing product with best in class amenities here. This is how that looks. And so you can kind of see the slope of the site in the top image. That is the east facing facade. The bottom or the middle left image is actually the front of the building. So that's what you would see looking from Eagleville Road. We have a similar expression of the entry moment where we're treating that as a special moment with kind of a copper colored metal panel denoting that that's the entry to the building. And then similarly, it's the entire building is articulated as a podium made of brick with these residential boxes kind of stacked on top of it. This is how that starts to look, looking west now on Eagleville Road. Looking east, this is kind of an overview that shows you the project in its totality and looking from the other direction. So that's the fly through. and we can, happy to answer any questions as we finish up the presentation, but I wanted to go through some of the density and parking calculations that we are kind of claiming as part of this proposal. And so the first section I want to go through is the density calculation. So the zoning regulations have a base allowable density for PB4 zoning, which is 400 bedrooms per acre. There is another 20 bedrooms per acre that's allowable if we incorporate specific community specific features into our proposal. And those features are community amenities that are available to the general public, any offsite connections and related type improvements, structured parking, and sustainable development. And so what you're looking at in this table shows you the number of bedrooms that we're claiming as part of this density bonus. So the base density is 1,132 bedrooms. That's what's allowable by right with no bonuses. We believe we are satisfying every one of the available density bonuses, which add up to 56 more bedrooms. So that brings the total to 1,178 in terms of bedrooms. 1,187 in terms of bedrooms. I'm sorry. So I'll just go through section by section and describe to you kind of the features we're incorporating into our proposal and how they fit as part of the available density bonuses described in the regulations. So the first density bonus has to do with community amenities, and we've incorporated a few in both Site A and Site B. The regulations are rather vague as to what constitutes a community amenity. They give examples. The examples are recreational facilities, public parks, meeting space, and the regulations say that these have to be in addition to the other amenities that are already required. There's a certain amount of outside space that's already required, certain amount of amenity space that's already required, so you can't double dip. So these have to be truly additional amenities. And so I'm just going to go through for Site A. We have three things that we're kind of offering to the public. The first is an interior through block connection that would allow someone in a wheelchair to go through the building and get up from North Eagleville Road to King Hill Road. So in that exhibit, you'll see a blue dashed line. So somebody could actually come in the lower lobby, enter the elevator, and exit the upper lobby out onto the King Hill Road frontage of the property. And so this would allow a through block connection that's not currently there. It is a very steep hill, and we believe that to be a public amenity, and we would keep that open during business hours. So the same hours that the building was open, the general public could actually come through the project and use it as a through block connection that would connect, campus parking to the lab space to the south. Additionally, there would be an exterior through block connection, a sidewalk to the east of Site A that would allow that same connection at all times, but it would not be ADA accessible because it's too steep of a hill. And then the third community amenity that we're proposing for Site A is a car share service. We are using the car share service to get a parking bonus, but we're proposing to actually open that up and make it available to the general public and not just the residents of our building. And so that's the third community amenity that we're proposing in Site A. Site B, we're proposing 2 additional community amenities within Site B. One of the things we try to do is generate a nice lobby experience in our projects. And that means lots of activity and lots of connectivity with the exterior. And so we've incorporated successfully at several of our projects a coffee shop within our lobby. And it's branded New Here Coffee. And basically it's an operational coffee shop. Anybody can come in and buy coffee or a treat. And it's basically, it's not rented space. We have an operating agreement with a third-party operator where we actually, it's a revenue or loss sharing agreement where a lot of times we're actually subsidizing that business to be there because we value the hustle and bustle that a coffee shop would create in our lobby. And so we're proposing that use here. It's basically a deferred rent type scenario that would ensure that a retail use is there effectively. And that would be open during the same hours as the building, similar to the through block connection on the other side of the street. And then similarly to the other side of the street, we would have additional car share spaces available for public use in the parking deck of this building as well. And so those are the two community amenities that we're proposing in Site B. The table at the bottom of this slide shows you what that means in terms of extra bedrooms. So we're talking about 11 extra bedrooms for doing, incorporating these features into Site A and Site B total. The next density bonus is for off-site connections and related improvements. The regulations are similarly vague as to what that means. We have interpreted that as spending money to upgrade and incorporate features that promote travel offsite and make that easier. And so at both sites, we're proposing to install bus shelters where there is currently a bus stop but no shelter. And so you'll see the bottom left image there is a clip from our civil engineering plan. That's Site A, and it's showing you the new bus shelter that's being proposed. It's highlighted. It is actually off of our site. On Site B, on the other hand, the bus stop is directly in front of the project, and we are proposing incorporating a new bus stop as part of that project as well. So similarly, this is worth about 11 beds total in the regulations. The next two are pretty easy. They're the same for both projects. We have regulations say that we can get a density bonus of up to 8 bedrooms per acre. It's a rate of 4 bedrooms for every 100 structured parking spaces we're providing. And so on Site A, we're providing 312 structured spaces, and Site B, we're providing 237 structured spaces. So we basically max out that bonus on both sides of the street. And we're claiming the 8 bedroom per acre bonus for doing that as well. So that's a total of 23 bedrooms. And then the final density bonus is for sustainable construction. So the regulations say that if we satisfy the minimum requirements of Energy Star certification, that there is a density bonus relating to that, and we are proposing to do that for both sites. That finishes up the density bonuses that we're claiming. So again, it's a total of 56 extra beds on top of the base density of 1,132 bedrooms. The next component I want to run through is the parking reductions. So the regulations have a similar, similar to the density bonuses. There are certain features that we could incorporate into the project in order to earn parking reductions. We think that's appropriate here, given our location so close to campus, the underlying density, which is one of the highest in town. We think that it's appropriate to reduce parking, given that it's a very walkable site to the university and to our target demographic. So before we start, I just want to establish kind of what's required as the base requirement, and then I can run through the reductions that we're claiming. So retail is parked at 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. And so we're showing that separately in the tables there in Site A and Site B. We have 45 spaces for Site A and 12 spaces for Site B. That's based on the square footage of retail that we're proposing at each site. There is a section in the regulations that says that in PB4 zoning, there's a parking reduction of 20% that we can claim. So we are claiming that as well. So you'll see the -8 and -2 there. And that brings us to the total required commercial parking spaces of 37 and 10. For a group dwelling, the rule is 1 per bedroom plus 10%, basically, to account for guests. And so that that totals to 642 spaces, group dwelling spaces for site A, and 665 group dwelling spaces for site B. And the next 4 slides, I'm going to walk you through some of the features that we're incorporating to get parking reductions to that group dwelling parking requirement. So this is a summary of the on menu items in the regulations. And kind of what we're proposing to do. So this is the overall roadmap. And so we'll start with site A, 642 required group dwelling parking spaces. Site B is 665. And then we're utilizing 4 different group dwelling parking reductions that are explicitly offered in the regulations. The first one is provisions for bicycle parking. If we provide extra bicycle parking, we can reduce the parking requirement on a 1-for-1 basis up to a maximum of 5% of the base requirement. The second is public transit, and that is basically based on proximity to a university or town bus route. There's a private transit credit that's offered to applicants that actually provide a private shuttle route that's distinct and separate from the public route. And then there's car share parking. So if we have shared cars, there is a certain bonus attributed to that as well. So we're basically utilizing all of these parking reductions, and I have a separate slide for each one, to get the total parking required down to 275 spots for site A and 227 spots for site B. So the first of those reductions is basically the bicycle stall parking reduction. So that's a 1-for-1 reduction up to 5%, and it's only available for projects that are within half a mile or 2,600 feet from a town designated bike route. So on the left, I'm showing the town designated bike route map, which shows Hunting Lodge Road. That star up in the top left corner, that's our site. We're right next to it. We're about 1,128 feet away from it. So we're about a quarter mile away from the town designated bike route, I'm sorry. And therefore we qualify for this reduction. And so the chart at the bottom of the page shows basically the code required number of bike stalls and then how many we're providing. So we're providing more bike stalls than is already required by code. So this is truly in addition to the base requirement. And then so we're actually claiming a parking reduction based on those bike stalls that have been provided in excess of the code requirement. So we're providing 34 extra stalls in site A, and we're getting 32 spaces of credit in site A for the parking spaces. And then similarly, site B, we're providing 76 extra stalls in that building, but we're only getting 33 spaces of credit because we're kind of constrained by the maximum of 5% reduction there. Public transit parking reduction. So that's actually based on distance to a town or university bus stop. There does have to be a sidewalk connection to the bus stop. So site A, there's a bus stop within 750 feet just to the east of the site. There is actually a bus stop across the street on King Hill, but since it's not connected by a sidewalk, we couldn't count that. So we're claiming the 10% allowable reduction for site A because it's within 750 feet. And then site B, there is actually a bus stop directly in front of the site connected with the sidewalk. So we're claiming the 15% allowable reduction for that. And so that's basically 64 space reduction for site A and a 99 space reduction for site B. And just noting again, as part of our connectivity density spend, we are proposing to install bus shelters to promote the use of each bus stop. So the biggest reduction is actually the private transit parking reduction. And so the regulations say that for applicants that provide private transit on either hourly or half-hourly basis, those applicants would be eligible for a base reduction of 15% of the parking requirement for hourly service or 20% of the parking requirement for half hourly service. And then a 2% reduction for every stop along that private transit route. And so we've proposed the route that's shown on the screen. And the little gold stars represent each of our sites. And so it's an 8-stop route. So we're claiming the hourly base reduction. So we'll be providing hourly service. So that's a 15% reduction, and then 2% per stop for 8 stops. And you can see the proposed route there, which basically goes around the campus and up to Four Corners and back down. The fourth parking reduction is based on executing an agreement with a car share company to provide car share spaces within our project. So a resident who didn't have a car could actually rent a car if they needed to go into town for something. And so we've had preliminary conversations with a company called Envoy, which actually provides electric vehicles that you can actually rent via an app. And this is the service that we would locate in each building and actually make accessible to the public, even though that's not necessarily required by this parking reduction. So we get, basically, we're claiming a 20% reduction for this because you get 2% for every stall that you provide. So 10 total stalls of car share parking. And so this is a summary of everything I just said. And so you'll see the baseline requirement for site A, site B. So the baseline requirement for parking would be 1,354 spaces. With all of the reductions I just went over, they add up to 894, and that leaves 460 spaces required. But we're actually providing more than that. We're providing 549 spaces between the two projects, and that is inclusive of 10 spaces of fluff, so on each site. So really there's 569 spaces, but as the design evolves, a column may get bigger or move or something. So we want to make sure that there's some flexibility in there. So we've already deducted 10 spaces from what currently exists to account for that, those unknowns. And that sums it up for the design fly through and the density bonuses and parking reductions that we're requesting. And so I will turn it over to the Langen team now to talk about civil, traffic, and landscape.
All right, thank you, Andy. And just for the record, my name is Tim O'Neill of Langen Engineering. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. And before I get into the site civil discussion here, I just wanted to reiterate that this application has gone through the inland wetland application process and received a conditional approval. That also includes a third-party peer review process for which we have received a fully satisfied comment response letter. Both of these sites have been designed in conformance with the town of Mansfield regulations and in many cases exceed those minimum requirements. And what we're looking at here is site A, and under the existing conditions, the site is currently developed with virtually no stormwater management on site. And there's roughly a 30-foot elevation change, the uphill side being on King Hill Road to the south, and then going downhill towards the North Eagleville Road frontage to the north. Majority of the site runoff makes its way in a northwesterly direction to the open channel portion of North Eagleville Brook, which can be seen here just off the private property in the North Eagleville right-of-way. In the proposed development, we are maintaining or improving those drainage patterns while providing a high level of water quality treatment and peak flow attenuation from the proposed development. We achieve that through our proposed robust stormwater management system, which is collecting relatively clean runoff from the proposed site to begin with, and achieves these high levels of treatment and attenuation through several different types of BMPs, 3 of which are shown here on the slide. We are proposing a very significant amount of green roof as a part of this application. We have hooded and sumped catch basins and a water quality unit, which is our main source of water quality treatment for the runoff from the site. Water eventually flows through a closed pipe network and is discharged to an integrated storm cistern, which is below the northwestern region of the proposed building. That's where the main attenuation for the site takes place, of which we are significantly over providing from the minimum regulations required by the town of Mansfield. The application also proposes site-specific operations and maintenance manuals. These manuals identify specific inspection and maintenance criteria for each individual stormwater management feature and site area. And as a condition of the inland wetland approval, will be entering into a stormwater maintenance agreement with the town of Mansfield, which requires this maintenance to be done regularly and reported to the town. So this will ensure a high level of performance of the stormwater management system long into the future. And if you could flip to the next slide, please. This application also proposes a thorough 3-phased soil erosion and sediment control approach. Again, this has been reviewed and approved through the inland wetland application process. And each phase actually proposes features targeted towards construction activities that will be taking place at that time. And during all 3 phases of this construction period, you'll notice that there are more robust protection features in areas that are close proximity to sensitive features, like the open water course, which is the open portion of North Eagleville Brook in the northwestern region of the site. The very first activity that will happen on site is that the perimeter controls will be installed to make sure that no runoff or no propagation of soils will happen off site. And these soil erosion sediment control features will remain on site and installed until the site has been determined stabilized. At that point, all soil erosion sediment control features will be fully removed from the development. And if you could please flip to the next slide. This plan is showing the service and utility connections to Site A. You'll notice that all of the utilities tie into the North Eagleville Road right-of-way and are located in the northeastern region of the site. We have submitted requests for both water and sanitary sewer services to the town of Mansfield, and we've received positive feedback identifying available capacity for both of these properties here. We've also met with the Water Service Advisory Committee, who has voted to recommend providing water service to the site. And Eversource is aware and has been contacted of the development. We're continuing to coordinate them as the site design progresses. And if you could switch to the next site. And here we're looking at Site B, and under the existing conditions, the site is currently developed. On this site, there is a stormwater collection and conveyance system. However, there is no treatment or attenuation included in that system. Again, we're looking at a roughly 30-foot elevation change from the northeastern corner of the site down to the southwestern region of the site. And again, the vast majority of runoff makes its way down either by sheet flow or through the existing conveyance network to an existing outfall connection to a second open channel portion of Eagleville Brook, located in the southwestern corner of the site, again, just off the property in the North Eagleville Road right-of-way. In the proposed development, we're maintaining or improving those existing drainage patterns and providing high levels of treatment and water quality flow attenuation, again, through a robust stormwater management system, collecting relatively clean runoff from the proposed development. And you can see a few of those BMPs here. Again, similar to Site A, we're providing significant amount of green roof area, put in some catch basins, water quality unit, which will be providing the main source of water quality treatment for the site, and a below ground stormwater cistern by the garage entrance. There's also a rain garden that's proposed within the right-of-way of North Eagleville Road. This feature is being coordinated with UConn right now as they have control over the property within the North Eagleville Road right-of-way. This again has a site-specific operation and maintenance manual, which will require reporting to the town and identify specific operations and maintenance inspections for each individual stormwater feature and site region. And if we could click to the next slide. Again, on Site B, we've approached this with a 3-phase soil erosion and sediment control plan, specifically targeting construction activities to take place during that phase with specific source control features. There is the sensitive wetland area, again, to the southwest region of the site, and more robust protection measures can be found in that region as well. Again, similar to Site A, the first construction activity on site will be to install perimeter controls. Soil erosion features will remain on site throughout construction until site is determined stabilized, at which point all soil erosion sediment control measures will be removed from the site. And moving to the next slide. Site B's utility services will be taken from North Eagleville Road right-of-way down in the southeastern corner, and one connection for gas made over off of DeWitt Road. Again, service requests have been submitted to the town for both water and sewer, and this town has responded positively, identifying available capacity for the development. And the Water Service Advisory Committee has voted to recommend providing water to this development as well. And from there, I'll pass it off to Dan Cleary to discuss some of the traffic design.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Dan Cleary, Langen Engineering, Senior Traffic Engineer. We did perform a full traffic study for this project. I won't go over all the details of the sizes as the applicant has already gone over the number of units and things, but we looked at both sites together in one study. Site A on the south side with access off of North Eagleville Road and off of King Hill Road. And then Site B, which is in between Lot F and the public safety facility to the north of North Eagleville Road, which has exclusive access onto North Eagleville Road. The intersections we looked at are shown on this graphic, 6 in total, all the way from Hunting Lodge Road, which is a 4-way stop, but the southern approach is closed now. The King Hill, North Eagleville, Ladoit intersection down to North Eagleville Road and Discovery Drive, and then all the way down to the intersection of the thruway of North Eagleville and Stores. And then we looked at the more less utilized intersections, which would be King Hill and Hillside, and then the rotary that serves the north garage and then access into the campus. Next. We, as I said, did a full traffic study. We did traffic counts for this, and I know from previous experience, you'd want to know when those occurred. And they were on January 31st of this year. It was a Tuesday. And the men were in Chicago and the women did not play that day. So it's a private joke. We did do a trip generation analysis for this. As the applicant has told you, there are existing uses on both sites. So we summarized the trip generation for the new, what was already existing on the sites, the proposed, based on the proposed development, and then took some very limited credits for internal trip capture and transit. The bottom line is that the two sites, the AM and PM peak with the 23 vehicle increase for Site A, 112 in the PM for Site A, and then Site B would generate an additional 46 new trips in the morning, and during the PM peak, another 29 trips. Go to the next one. We analyzed each of the intersections just for the, just for familiarize you. About 25% of the traffic we estimated would be coming from the west. Obviously, the majority of the traffic will be coming from the east. Small amounts coming, from the minor streets, but the majority of coming in from Stores and Discovery Drive. From that, about 70%, with 5% trickling in from from the minor roads. Next, there are no changes to the levels of service out there based on our analysis. If you can go back one. The only, difference in that is that small intersection at King Hill Drive, King Hill Road and Hillside goes from a B to a C. And that's, I think it was right at the B threshold. And then I think there was another 2 seconds and it put it over into the C. So it's, all in all, no real measurable change in how traffic would operate with the project in place. As we always do, we did do sightlines assessments at each of the driveways that are proposed. We meet those requirements, CONDOT requirements at each of the locations except for one, which we've been working with the peer reviewer on, which is at King Hill Road. And I think you heard Tim talk about the differences in elevation there. And if you're leaving our driveway on the King Hill Road side to the right, there is a significant grade change there's both a crest vertical curve and a horizontal curve there. While the speed limit's only 25 miles an hour and the sight distance isn't significant, we can achieve the proper sight distance right now without doing something on the property next door to us, which is owned by Yukon. And we're still looking at options there, but for the time being and working with, again, the peer reviewer, we're showing restricting movement out of that driveway, so we don't have to deal with the sight distance issue, looking to the west or approaching from the west. We did meet with the traffic authority back on the 24th and presented this. The focus of their comments was mainly on pedestrian access on the north side with between the two projects. And Kristen will speak to this when she talks. The pedestrian, we have modified the pedestrian access there, the sidewalk configuration from what was originally proposed. And we have proposed some planting there to discourage crossing Eagleville Road at that point and bringing them down to the next intersection and bringing them across there. But she'll get into that more when she gets up. We will be going to OSTA. I know that's always a question. We've made our formal submission to them. We have spoken with them, gone over some of the basic elements that we always do with these things, and they're looking forward to reviewing it. We've got no comment back, and as you know, until we have an approved project, then they won't go and look at it, but we've already started that process. Finally, we have been working with your peer reviewer. They have, I think we've been through 2 rounds with them. The last correspondence I have is from the 11th that we submitted. The 3 major issues that we talked about with them was the trip generation. They had made a comment regarding our use of student housing for trip generation in this case, and suggested that we use some proportion of regular multifamily. So what we did was simply replace the the ITE student housing with full multifamily, reran the analysis, and effectively there's no difference. The big difference is that the student housing is much lower in the morning, peak hour, and higher in the afternoon, and vice versa for multifamily, which makes sense because the kids don't want to go to early class, and the people that would live in the multifamily would have to get up and go to work. So that really made some bit of sense. But the difference is when you add everything to it, there's no change. The other was the site distance, as I talked about, and we've been working with them specifically on that one driveway. And also there was a very minor comment with regard to trip distribution, where we had slightly different trip distributions for both site on the north and a site on the south. And we've homogenized that and made them the same. So those changes are all reflected in the study that you have in front of them. Sensitivity analysis was added, and that's part of your package. And that's effectively my summary of the traffic study.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Mitchell. I'm a registered landscape architect with Langen as well. So I work with Dan and Tim that have just presented. So I'm going to get into the planting and lighting and green roof at a high level. What you're seeing here on the plan here is Site A, as you've been hearing, Site A and Site B. So this is Site A. We're illustrating the on-grade planting, the ground planting. As Tim mentioned, we do have, in addition to the ground planting, planted green roofs that I'll touch on in a slide to follow. So those are located throughout multiple levels of the building. To the west here, to the left, there's mature vegetation to remain. To the north, there's Eagleville Brook buffer enhancements. So that had been collaborated and reviewed through the multiple committees that were mentioned by Tim previously. And then also to the north is a series of native trees, shrubs, and ground plantings. As Dan mentioned, related to the traffic, these plantings and as you may see on the screen, a series of boulders, that's really to guide pedestrians on the sidewalks. So really guide the pedestrian connections there. So that was collaborated and reviewed, as I mentioned, by various committees. And then to the south, along King Hill Road, there's a series of native shade trees that are located along the pedestrian sidewalks, the drop-off, and then framing that front entry there to the southeast. If you go to the next slide. This is Site B, so similar to Site A, this is illustrating, the ground planting. In addition to this, we have a significant amount of green roof area as well. To the west and to the north there, we have existing mature vegetation that's to remain. And in addition to that vegetation, there is a series of, that will be native seed mix that we proposed in any disturbed areas. So that will be to the west and to the north. Then to the east and to the south, we have again a series of native trees and ground plantings that will be proposed along the sidewalks. This is enhancing the streetscape and the entry experience. Then the next slide. This touches on the green roof design. So this is an extensive, kind of lower profile system. So it's a modular system that we work closely with vendors to choose the best plantings for this area, to stay current, stay up to speed on the latest plantings and the latest technology. So this, as I mentioned, is a modular system, natural vegetation, largely self-sustaining, and it's a natural infrastructure that reduces stormwater runoff and creates an attractive natural surface that you look down to. As you're seeing to the right there, this is a newly planted area in Middletown, Connecticut, and thriving at the moment. Continue to thrive. Go to the next slide. So then just to touch briefly on site lighting, incorporated into the previous submissions that, as mentioned, has gone through various committees. We're illustrating photometric plans, the light fixtures, but at high level, these are LED energy efficient light fixtures, dark sky compliant. Most of these are wall mounted downlights and bollards that are directed and maintaining light onto the site. Go to the next slide. This just touches again on Site A and then on Site B and the various fixtures here to the right. And now I'll turn it over to that. Oh, here we go. Yep.
Hi, this is Tom Cody again. I'd like to just make a couple of follow-up comments and ask a couple of questions of Andy Savoy before we move on to the final parts of our presentation. Andy mentioned at the beginning of his presentation that their experience, CoreSpace's experience, is that the vast majority of these bedrooms will be rented by university students. That's not to say, though, that technically anyone that walked in to the leasing office would be able to lease a bedroom. There is no legal preclusion of that happening. But the practical side of this is that this product, this community is really being designed around and has amenities geared toward the university student. And the question I just would like Andy to answer is, this arrangement is similar in other projects that CoreSpaces has developed and operates, and I'd be curious if you could tell the commission what kind of what percentages of projects do you see non-students actually renting?
It's very low. It's actually less than 0.5% across our entire portfolio. And that includes several projects in urban areas that you would think would be desirable by anybody, plenty of non-students, but the fact is that in our experience, we've seen that student housing property is typically used mostly by students, no matter how convenient it may be or not be to other things besides the university.
Our team included in the project design considerations for a number of sort of technical aspects of the operations, including how trash would be handled, recycling, deliveries and the like. Team met with the recycling coordinator and the waste collection service. Andy, do you want to just summarize the
Sure,
conclusions on that?
Have an appendix that shows kind of where we landed. And so so our meeting with the trash collection company, we basically worked out a way where trash could be collected and trash collection vehicles would be able to pull off of Eagleville Road all the way onto our site, collect the trash, and then drive into the building and complete a 3-point turn and exit on Eagleville Road, also facing forward. So they never have to back up in Eagleville Road. They never have to stop in North Eagleville Road. That was something that was very important to us, and we were able to come up with a plan that allowed that to happen. And so that was the net result of that.
Great. And then finally, the regulations require an applicant for any type of multifamily or group dwelling project to address what kind of operational controls will you employ in the project that will, in a sense, manage the resident and community behavior. And how would you approach emergency response? How would you handle sort of your own private internal enforcement of behavior? And CoreSpaces, I think, has a considerable amount of experience in this regard. They have developed an operations plan. And just very briefly, Andy, if you could describe that.
Sure. So we plan to basically hire several, create several new job positions at this property. A big part of our management strategy is to actually have on-call community concierges that would be available at all times. And so these are basically residents that work part-time at our community, typically get a rent discount as part of the compensation, plus they're paid hourly, but they're on call basically like RAs. And so there's always someone to call. And if there's a problem that needs escalating to the manager or to the local authorities, there's someone there to pick up that call. And it's all internally managed, which would not be the case for students that would be living in single family homes, for example. And also our management company does coordinate closely with fire and police department to develop a safety plan prior to opening their doors. And so that would be all well coordinated directly with fire and police.
At this point, I'd like to touch on the affordable housing requirement in the regulations. As you know, what's now been codified as section 190-23 sets forth the requirements for affordable housing, which would very briefly be providing 15% of the units as affordable and 5% as workforce, and that would apply to either multifamily units or group dwelling bedrooms. Now, the regulations also provide several different methods of meeting this requirement by alternative means. And one of those methods is the payment of a fee in lieu. And this application proposes a fee in lieu payment of $3.3 million to satisfy the requirement for the affordable housing, the number of bedrooms that would be required. We have followed the formula that's contained in the regulations to arrive at this number. We have met with the Affordable Housing Committee. The summary from that meeting was that they recommend that this project not provide a fee in lieu payment, but instead actually provide affordable and workforce units on the project site. We've also met with the Housing Authority Director and the Housing Authority's housing consultant. And I understand that a letter was submitted just today from the Housing Authority Director, and she essentially takes the similar position to what the Affordable Housing Committee asked, which is that the project actually provide affordable units that would be deed restricted instead of making a fee in lieu payment. Now, the applicant we physically cannot put the units on site. We cannot provide the affordable bedrooms as a feature of the application. There's several reasons why this is not simply feasible to do. And the first is that if you look at the 4 criteria that you have to use to evaluate whether the alternative method is appropriate or not, 2 of them really jump off the page relative to this application. And the 2 that I would point to are the first and the fourth, A and D. So the first of the criteria is the number of required income restricted housing units and the practicality of incorporating those units into the development. And the other part that relates directly to this application is the fourth one. What are the difficulties of complying with local, state, or federal requirements in developing income restricted units as a part of the development? And the reason that this becomes impractical for this application is that this application proposes group dwelling residences, not multifamily dwelling units. And as I said at the top of the meeting, the group dwelling definition focuses on the exclusive use of a bedroom. Leasing by the bed is the metric for the group dwelling land use, as opposed to the multifamily land use type, which is basically a dwelling unit to be occupied by one family. But as Andy Savoy has described for you, this project does not lease by the dwelling unit. It leases by the bedroom. And the occupants, the renters, if you will, are not going to be families in the sense of a spouse or 2 spouses, potentially with children. It is the individual renter, most likely a university student. And so, as an example, if you have a 4-bedroom unit, rather than that being one family, that's 4 separate individuals, each with their own lease. Now, the town staff met with or communicated with the staff of the State Department of Housing, Michael Santoro specifically. And we also communicated with Mr. Santoro, and he's provided a couple of emails to us and to the town staff, sort of summarizing his analysis of the questions that have been put to him. And for the purposes of measuring and implementing affordability, what we have learned from the state staff is that they look at the unit, the dwelling unit as a whole. That's the metric for them. So even though this application, the hub project, proposes renting by the bed, the state has indicated that the way they would measure affordability is based on the whole unit, as if a family is renting the unit. So that the practical situation we're presented with is having to take an affordable rent for a family, which is already potentially somewhat less than market rate, and then dividing it in four. If there's four bedrooms. What we're not able to do is measure affordability by the bedroom. We can't say that the renter who's renting this bedroom could be evaluated as if they are renting, for example, a studio or a one-bedroom apartment and apply the affordable rent for that. If we could do that, we would. But that's not the way the state measures affordability. They measure it as the dwelling unit as a whole, and they apply the affordable criteria for a family. So when your regulations have 80%, hitting the 80% AMI target for affordable, or the 120% target for a workforce, we're in a completely different realm of renting. We're not renting to families. So we have a fundamental problem in delivering the kind of units that the regulations would require. And so therefore, we think we're really hitting A and D right on the head here. It's not practical, and we can't comply with the state's criteria for how they measure affordability. So unfortunately, while Mansfield's regulations include group dwelling in your affordability requirement, the group dwelling land use is not a good fit. It does not align well with the state's definitions for affordable housing. And so I would just compare this to the other projects you've recently reviewed. You've been reviewing other multifamily projects which were proposing multifamily use, not group dwelling. And so they could provide actual units on site because they would be aligned better with a family renting a dwelling unit, and then they hit the target rent. That's not the same model as the group dwelling land use type. So there's just this fundamental lack of alignment, if you will, between that land use and the requirement that group dwellings also provide affordable housing. So as we've looked at this and we've had discussions with town staff about it, we would submit that because of these practical problems with complying, the alternative means of compliance really is appropriate. And that we would submit may be the reason why you even have alternative methods of compliance in the regulations. They're there for a reason, and we think this application is exactly the kind of reason why you should consider the alternative means of compliance. And so we've proposed through the $3.3 million contribution. You want to go to the next slide? I would note that the next one. Yeah, here we go. Another point of of review here was, well, what does the plan of conservation and development say? The POCD makes specific reference to preserving the availability of housing that is reasonably affordable to the workforce. The focus of the POCD affordable housing section really focused on families, workforce, and having a sustainable housing stock for families. There's really very little, if any, mention of or community goal of providing affordable units for students who happen to be living off campus. So forcing this application to provide units on site would not meet these goals contained in the POCD, and they would not be financially viable for the application to provide. We think that the 3.3 million fee in lieu proposal is a significant amount of money. It can be leveraged to provide affordable units in other locations in town. And as I said, we did have a conversation with the Housing Authority Director to understand the projects that they're currently involved in, the ones that they would like to do in the future. And we think that this funding could be used to support that. And so that's why, after much careful thought, extensive thought, and discussion with various individuals within Town Hall, we're proposing the fee in lieu payment as an alternate means of compliance with the affordable housing requirement. So in summary, this proposed mixed-use community of group dwelling uses and commercial uses would be a vibrant addition to the town. It would redevelop 4 parcels of land which are are in need of redevelopment. It'd be a significant enhancement to those properties. The site is appropriate for the proposed use. It is adjacent to and almost completely surrounded by land owned by the state of Connecticut and the UConn campus. It's zoned appropriately. It's uniquely zoned in that there's very little PB4 land in town other than these parcels. The developer Core Spaces, as well as Wilmerite Construction, have proven track records of developing and operating successful communities, including university town related communities across the country. Andy Savoy has described for you the experience that Core Spaces has with management and the operation of communities like this, and the success that they have had across the country doing that. I think there's no question the design here is high quality. Antunovich Associates and Newman Architects have spent a ton of time refining this design to make a really exciting design for this site. We've taken you through the different criteria in the regulations for the density bonuses, the parking reductions, and I would submit, given everything else that we've talked about, your other decisional criteria have been satisfied. This is a compact project in a great location. It will promote pedestrian traffic, transit usage, private transit usage, and car sharing, which is something that you currently do not have in the area. Technical aspects of the application have been thoroughly reviewed, really by now, what's been essentially three different peer reviews as we've moved through the wetland applications and this application. Langen Engineering did the thorough review on traffic. Dan Clary just summarized that with conclusions that there really will be no negative impacts on traffic. And with that, we would hope that you would see your way to approve the application. We're all here and available to answer questions, and would look forward to doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Yes, go ahead.
I will note that your peer review, because of the timing, we had just received the applicant's information on September 12th. And so your peer review have not made their final comments. So I am recommending that you keep the public hearing open until October 2nd, just to make sure that everything is buttoned up in terms of traffic. And then you
Okay.
do have a number of items in my memo that are highlighted just to kind of go through.
Right. Okay. Questions from the commission for the, oh, yes. Why don't we take this opportunity to take a break? And so we'll be back in 10 minutes. There's no way we can turn the air conditioning off. Maybe it's just because the air conditioner is off, but the heating's not on. Yeah. Bring a bigger coat.
Mhm.
Well, it's been interesting because it has been in like midnight, it's been around, they're saying it's hitting 50 degrees.
Yeah.
55. It is definitely, we went from summer
Yeah.
right into fall.
From the nineties to the fifties.
Well, I have yet to turn on the heat in our house, so. My wife is-
I cheated a little bit. I turned one on in the basement. Kind of rises.
It
through the house.
rises?
Yeah.
I told my wife, if you don't like it, just shut all the windows. It'll warm up.
Yeah, it's hard to turn the heat on before the summer actually ends, which is Thursday. We could get one more.
Because we had those last week, it was
Yeah.
in the high 70s, so we get one more,
Mhm.
then you'd be like.
I agree with you.
You really wanna-
Yeah,
Do you want another?
I want, yeah,
More
two
warmth?
or 3 weeks.
More? Well, my wife would turn the heat on right now. Well, keep it on, but. You hear his notes there. Did she print all those at home? The entire packet? Did she come here and get it from me?
She must be having one of those industry sites.
Print some more.
We don't print them. We get the Atkins copies.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the transfer is 5 feet again.
Yeah. Oh. Well. Okay, 416. Great, you said oil's cheap now. This is what, and now it's up to heating oil, so. Yeah. Well, I didn't complain. Very much, sir. And then the first check.
I see, yeah, it's okay there.
The AC's off? All right, good.
You're officially in winter, that's all.
Okay, I think we're ready to resume. At 7:50 PM. So this would be a good moment for any of us who want to ask questions of the applicant. Vera, I know you got a question.
I was just reviewing Jen's memo and she has substantial questions on some of the things, but which I think we need time to delve into, but I just have a few thoughts as we went through the presentation. I wondered about, you talk about concierge management. I wasn't sure what you were talking about for building management. Do you not have staff on the ground there on the property?
We do. We have several full-time positions that would be there during business hours. And then the student concierge aspect of it is basically to provide 24/7 oversight. There
So
are
are
other maintenance staff and security staff that would be non-students that would be working at the property as well.
Well, business hours is one thing, but that's not when the partying begins. So there could be substantial oversight needed at times for the noise level, the partying level, whatever, which brings us to, I'm delighted to have you have a coffee shop there, but I'm not delighted to have a tavern there. While you might say, well, that will avoid drinking and driving, you also make it easy so easy for students to just drop down and imbibe when perhaps normally they would not do that. And you know, at weird hours or whatever, but or not even at weird hours, but I'm not happy about the tavern and the residential areas. Car share, I don't see anywhere, I haven't seen anywhere, it may be there, but do you have electrical charge stations?
We would.
And where would they be and how many would there be?
There would be enough to, if the car share was an electric car share, there would need to be a charging station for every car.
Right,
And they would be, I'm gonna flip back to the plan. Because in the parking deck, there's basically access control for residents, but there's a portion of the parking deck that would be open to the public. And so in site A, bear with me while I scroll all the way back. Site A, you would pull in off of Eagleville Road. You see a ramp that goes uphill to the bottom of the page. There would be access control right there by the elevators to restrict access to residents only beyond that point. But all of the parking spaces behind the retail use would be open to the public to serve as guest parking, retail parking, and that's also where the electric spaces would be. And the strategy would be the same across the street where you have
why wouldn't you be providing that for the residential parking?
The residential parking would be able to access it, but as part of our density bonus, we're making that available to the general public. So we're locating it in the publicly accessible portion of the parking deck.
I would propose that you need to do something in the residential area because your public parking is far less than residential, right?
As part of the regulations, when we updated our regulations, we have 10% of your parking requirements have to be electric vehicle charging capable. So that you have to, so that's 10%. So I think, Vera, am I
see.
understanding your question in saying that, they're going to have 10% of their parking spaces electrical EVCS capable. So because they're having 20 car share, how are you gonna have additional
I wasn't quite aware of that. My architect may know
Yeah.
whether or not there's electric
Yeah.
parking spaces planned, but I would propose that we meet that requirement over and above the electric car share spaces.
So you would have for your car share spaces, they'd be able to plug in, and then 10% of your resident.
Spaces
yeah.
would have the electric charge.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood that question.
Yeah.
And I know you've crunched the numbers, but we start with a basic 1354 spaces down to 894. I'm not sure what that is, and then all the way down to 549. I guess it just doesn't seem like enough, but I know you've.
So
made the equations come out.
I have an exhibit showing the parking ratio for every project Core Spaces owns. And roughly 60% of the projects we've ever done have less of a parking ratio than this proposal. So we are slightly above average on our proposed parking as far as our entire portfolio goes, but close to average, not overly parked. And then just to be clear, the parking totals are summarized here. So 1354, we're claiming 894 spaces of reduction. And in large part, that is because of the location and the private shuttle route.
On your maintenance manual requirements for the reporting to the town, how long do you have to report to the town? And then what happens after that?
Are you talking about the stormwater?
Yes, stormwater
Okay.
management.
So if you look at the condition of approval that you'll, they're going to have to file a financial guarantee, I believe. That's in the zoning regulations. If you just bear with me, I'll find that for you. So they will have to, that's in their wetlands license. I think it's up for 3
Okay.
years. But then.
I mean, I'm concerned that they have to allow for their staff to keep this maintenance manual long after the town sees the reports. I will say, I'm happy to see a developer come in and say, yes, this is for students. I will say that I think this is a perfect space to have this many students congregated. So I agree with that. I have to say on affordable housing, I know it's against the grain of the Affordable Housing Commission, which should count for a lot, but it just seems like it does not fit the bill on that. The only thing I wish is that our equations allowed larger than 3.3 million, which I know you consider generous, but I don't think it's adequate. So that's my thought on that. And with that, I'll just.
Thank you.
Can I just
Yeah,
answer
okay.
one? So basically, per the zoning regulations, the applicant owner has to execute a stormwater management BMP facilities maintenance agreement with the town and record the agreement on the land records. So every development, I think we're in the process of doing that with the standard, is going to have to execute that stormwater management best management practice facilities maintenance agreement.
Which, yes, but that's only oversight for so long, right?
No, that's a forever maintenance agreement. There are provisions. I don't have the wetlands license in front of me that talk about 3 years of
Yes.
monitoring, but this maintenance agreement, it has to go on the land records, and that's something we'll work with Derek Delay, our assistant town engineer, to develop.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes.
I think the distinction is that the 3-year requirement relates to the plantings. That's a 3-year requirement that the plantings have to be.
There is that, and I believe there might be one other one in there, but we'd have to pull the wetlands license to see. Yeah.
The other part of it, the maintenance part of it is perpetual.
Yeah.
And we have submitted in the application, as Tim O'Neill said, an actual maintenance plan.
Bina.
The one thing that I had forgotten from before is that you have roof gardens, right? Or what you call roof gardens. And at that time that you presented that to us, it wasn't clear about how you were going to manage those. And I wondered if you had gotten that settled so that you're clear on how you manage the roof gardens?
We have been able to spend more time on the design of that green roof. And I don't know if that's something that you want to address or have one of the design team just get into that more.
Brian or Kristen could maybe speak to that.
Yes, oh, Brian, do you want to jump in or should I jump right in?
No, go ahead. You're the pro.
Okay. So yes, they are,
This
as I
is
mentioned, they're modular.
Kristen Mitchell.
Oh, hi, Kristen Mitchell with Langen. Thank you, landscape architect. Yes, so they are intended for that very low maintenance, largely, as I mentioned, largely self-sustaining, integrated irrigation, and then they're a modular system. So if there was something that needed to be replaced, it's easy to then remove that portion and reinstall that in that one location.
Thank you, Vino. And then Craig.
Yeah, I want to, again, go back to the affordable housing provision or non-provision. So do these bedrooms have a bathroom to use?
Yes, there's typically one bathroom per bedroom.
And what about a kitchen?
The kitchen is in a shared,
Could you speak into the mic? Sorry.
the kitchen is in a shared living space.
And what about kind of a, what do I call, a TV room or a sitting area or
That's-
something?
Right, that's all in a shared space.
So technically speaking, you could group a few bedrooms around these common spaces and allow for folks to rent out these bedrooms along with these common spaces as a unit. Right now, it's the business model that is, making it difficult to make it happen.
Right. One response would be, it's not the business model, it's the zoning regulation. I mean, the definition of group dwelling is that the renter has the exclusive use of a bedroom. So the definition of the group dwelling land use type does not talk about the unit as a whole. It focuses on bedroom. And so that's why we believe it's not so much a business choice by the applicant. It's simply responding to what this land use type is.
But I was looking at your, some drawing number 8. I don't know, it's the architectural drawing. And I'm looking at the grouping. And perhaps in any of those grouping, if, the new kind of a family or whoever could rent out, buy bedroom and finally get a unit, couldn't they? If that is a problem in the zoning.
The question?
So when I look at it, even if you're not renting it out as a unit, a group of people, right, maybe a 3 or 4, whoever, could rent out that many bedrooms that make that unit, right? The common kitchen, the common dining space, the common something, and then have a whole unit. They could create a unit.
I suppose maybe part of the answer though is it's the financial part of that equation. The total rent that could be charged would be the rent that a family could pay at 80% AMI.
It's actually a household.
Household.
Yeah.
Divided by however many bedrooms there are. That's what creates the financial lack of feasibility, if you will.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, go ahead.
So in this zone, In the PB4 zone, it is and the I zone is the only zone where group dwellings are allowed. That, however, oh,
Can't hear Jen.
So this, the PB zone and the I zone, you're allowed to have group dwellings, but you're also allowed to have multifamily dwellings. So this application is coming in with a group dwelling. It doesn't mean, I don't, I'd have to check with our attorney. It doesn't mean, I don't know that they couldn't come in with both.
Yeah.
So, and that would be different. So it would be like two different models, right? So if you're coming in under multifamily, then the definition of family applies. If you're coming in under group dwelling, it's basically a dorm. But so you can it may be possible to do a hybrid.
So you could like have one floor with just multifamily model and the other floors with the group dwelling model. Is that a possibility?
It's not a possibility. It would be extremely expensive to build that because none of the plumbing would stack because you'd have different demising walls and different sized units on every floor. It would be difficult to manage because you'd have two different leasing strategies, two different leasing teams. And also I'd point out that I believe that 4 and 5 bedroom units are not allowed in multifamily zoning, if I remember correctly.
It would have to be 3 bedrooms. Yep.
And so those units, so it wouldn't be possible then to lease that 4 bedroom or 5 bedroom by the unit because the definition of group dwelling is such that each occupant is entitled and leases 1 bed space and not 1 unit.
So all these are mostly 4 to 5 per
The vast majority of them are.
conglomeration.
I see you, Sarah. First Craig and then Sarah. Okay, Sarah.
I have a few questions. First, affordable housing. Why could these not be available to students who are lower income? Which would still fit into your model. Maybe I'm a student. I have a friend who is lower income. We want to share a unit. I pay full price. My friend pays reduced rate. There are plenty of students who are lower income at UConn.
That may be true, but the problem is that the scenario that you've suggested is not how it really works, as we've learned from, and the town staff has learned from the state. The state is going to expect, and state law would expect, that a unit would be deed restricted. And the rent that can be charged for that unit would be based on 80% AMI for the particular household. What we can't do is assign an affordable rent for a bedroom. That's what we can't do. So there's no way.
Why can't you? So you are treating, you're not really renting these as apartment units. You're renting them as bedrooms. So we could understand that each bedroom is essentially a unit and designate that each year you have a certain number of bedrooms that are affordable housing. It doesn't need to be a particular unit. It just needs to be the percentage.
Exactly what we asked the state. That's exactly the question we put to them and that Jennifer has asked. And that's not the way they do it. They will not recognize the calculation of affordability based on the bedroom. It's done by the dwelling unit.
Could Jennifer speak to that? The letter that we got was not that clear, the letter that was
Right.
included.
So over the weekend, there was some correspondence and I didn't put that in your packet and I can certainly share that with the commission. But I think what Mr. Cody is saying, and this is kind of hard to get our head wrapped around because, so what's going to happen in Mansfield is that you're going to get 450 more units on the books, right? So, and if you go with the fee in lieu, our percentage for affordable housing is going to go down. But what I think Mr. Cody is saying, and what I'm understanding from the state, is that we can't, a bedroom, there's no way to formulate it so that a bedroom will count towards our affordable inventory, if that makes sense. So they would have to come in with a hybrid model and set aside some as multifamily units that would be subject to the definition of family and some as group dwelling. So that's where I think I've had a hard time wrapping my head around this. But the group, the state will not count bedrooms only units. So, yeah.
If you look at the definition of dwelling unit in the statute, it says any house or building or portion thereof, which may include legally approved accessory apartments, which is occupied or designed to be occupied or is rented, leased, or hired out to be occupied as a home or residence of one or more. So I don't understand how that's.
So I need to get clarification from our attorney as well, because I have not had the benefit of being able to consult with him on this. So I call into him. But Jolene actually has the definition. She's brought something to my attention as well. So maybe she could.
Yeah, so just to be clear, how we define a dwelling unit in the zoning regulations, we say a building or portion thereof providing independent living facilities for one family, including provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. So I think while these units have all of those independent things, they have living, they have sleeping, they have eating, they have cooking, they are not living facilities for one family.
A bedroom is not, right? That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Neither is the dwelling unit, because it's 4 or 5 unrelated individuals. And that would not meet the definition of family.
I think we could go around on this a lot. I think that, it doesn't mean that in your model, it doesn't mean that it has to be for 4 people. You could have some suite, because basically my understanding of how this development is being constructed is it's suites. Like, so I had 2 kids who went to college, they lived in suites. So basically you've got bedrooms, baths, a kitchen area, some common areas, but you're renting them from the individual bedroom. It doesn't mean that you couldn't have a 3-bedroom design like that and call it a unit, a multifamily dwelling unit. It would be a different way to define it. Only no more than 3 unrelateds could live there, but it's a different model. And
Go ahead, Lynn.
I just
So
have a follow-up.
Can I just,
Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
guess
Go
I
ahead.
was wondering, how many units of different sizes are there? That wasn't specified.
Roughly 65% of the beds are in 4 or 5 bedroom units, and the balance are in 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Okay, go.
So some of those smaller units, there might be some potential.
So if I can understand then the suggestion from Ms. Kaufman, is that we would be mixing two different land uses. They have two different density calculations, two different methods of density measurement. And you're suggesting that we mash them together into one building.
I have not discussed this with my attorney.
Okay.
It's not a suggestion. It's kind of a thought that, all this information has been coming through, I got it Friday night and then today. So, but, I don't know if that's the solution. I certainly wouldn't want to be pinned to that.
Would you say that one way of thinking about this is that it's a dormitory?
Go ahead.
Dormitory with a bar.
I'd say, yeah, that's the best way to think about it. Privately owned dorm.
Yeah, it's a privately owned dorm. Sarah, you have another question?
I just have real concerns that I do think there's a huge need for affordable housing among UConn students. I think this is a real miss if we can't figure out some way to actually provide that. And maybe it's not possible, but I guess I'm not willing to give up on that quite yet. Is that okay? Jennifer, can we look into this a little more?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, you can direct the applicant to do that. And I definitely, and the public hearing, if you take my
We'll probably
recommendation, is
continue it, yeah.
supposed to continue. So I should be able to get some more information. But ultimately, you can ask that question of the applicant.
So
Okay.
to,
The other
to
thing-
continue,
Let
had
Bina
a
say
couple-
something.
so you're saying 65% is 4 and 5. That means 3%, 35% is 1 and 2. 1, 2, and 3. And 1, 2, and 3 could be offered up as units.
Then you run
As-
into the problem that Mr. Cody
Yeah,
has brought up.
that
There
will,
being two different zoning
Zoning,
metrics, and how do
yeah.
you comply with both?
yeah, we'll get council advice on that. I just wanted to clarify that it's a possibility, that it's not 100% 4 and 5. There are 1, 2, and 3 that could be marketed as dwelling units, if that issue is resolved.
Greg,
Are all the units priced the same? Is a unit in a 5-bedroom, is renting a bedroom in a 5-bedroom unit the same as renting renting in a 2 or 1 bedroom?
No, there are tiered pricing. And so our least expensive bed is something like $1,400 a month, with the most expensive bed being in a 1-bedroom unit, and that's something like $2,400 per month. There's very few of those. Those are luxury units. Most of the beds are in 4 and 5-bedroom units, which are the cheaper beds, because we expect those to be more popular.
Do those units have washers and dryers in them?
They do.
And big enough refrigerators for 5 guys and 6
Yes.
guys to fill up with beer?
Some have two refrigerators.
2 refrigerators?
Some do, yes.
Okay, no, that's reasonable.
okay, why don't we take this moment to go through some of these ones that are highlighted in yellow. Oh, Katie, I'm sorry.
It's the public, Katie can go, but you need to open it up to the public. at
Okay,
some point.
before we
Yeah,
do this,
yeah.
okay, all right. Katie, and then we'll open up to the public.
Okay, please refresh my memory. I missed the part of how many stories are these buildings? Because your renderings have them 6 stories high. And I thought we had only a 3 to 4 story height requirement.
So each building is 8 stories tall. Some of those levels are submerged underground because each site is on a hill. So from different angles, each building looks to be a different height, but at its tallest, there are 5 levels of units over 3 levels of parking for a total of 8 stories. And my understanding was that the height limit was much higher than 4 stories.
It's, yeah, we'd have to look, I mean, you read the regulations, you did this, but my understanding it's 8 stories in PB4, but I think there's some calculations for over parking or not. So I mean, my interpretation is that they are within their height limits.
Okay.
Thank you.
so- Okay, so why don't we open it to the public? So we would start with anyone who'd like to make a comment in favor of the project. Yeah, go ahead.
It's not a pro or con thing. First, my name is Kurt Hirsch, 106 Courtyard Lane. And just for full disclosure, my wife and I own the one piece in PB4 that is not part of this project. When the Plan of Conservation Development put in the PB4, this was the type of thing it envisioned. So I agree with Vera. This is where we want this type of development. My comment just came about listening to the traffic engineer. Traffic on King Hill, leaving the parking garage on the King Hill side and going west, passes my site. And it is a very blind sight line. The upper driveway, which is probably only, I don't know, I didn't measure it on the plan, but if I had to guess, no more than 50 feet from their garage opening. Right now, you hold your breath and you leave the driveway and hope somebody's not coming over the hill. So my question was to the applicant was whether UCOM will allow them to do some grading on the UCOM property to improve that sight line. That's my only real concern.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the pro side? If not, we'll go to the opposed side. Anyone on the opposed side? Anyone in comment or question? No. Go ahead.
And thank you for turning up the air conditioning.
Yeah, we don't need any more of that.
Just make sure you speak right into the mic.
Right into the microphone.
Right into the mic. Yep.
Good evening. I'm Paul Stern. I'm the Vice Chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. This is Sheila Amder.
Sheila Amder, I'm a member of the committee.
She's been serving as the chairman since its inception of the committee. We've come here in person to, on behalf of our entire committee, to underscore and emphasize how strongly we feel unanimously that this applicant should physically provide the affordable units that it's required by the code, as it has done in other parts of the country. As you know, as we've been looking, the code sets out 4 criteria for your board to consider when deciding whether to use this alternate compliance system, a system that's designed to, in the case of fee in lieu, to pay a fee intended to compensate the community for the affordable housing that it is not providing. Our committee looked at the hub's application with regard to all 4 criteria, and we concluded that as configured, the project meets none of them. I repeat, it meets none of them. We've detailed the specifics in our long memo that many of you have apparently read already, but allow me to sum up our assessment of the applicant's assertion that it would be impractical for it to physically comply with the affordable housing component. All of the features of its plan cited as impediments to physical compliance are self-imposed and a consequence of its specialized business plan. I repeat, they are entirely self-imposed by their choice of design. I won't take up any more of your time tonight to rehash the details of our memo, other than to urge you to read it carefully. And to point out that we also in that memo identify what we think is a really unique opportunity for this community to provide affordable housing for a growing number of cost-burdened, low-income students. We detailed some of that information in our memo as well. So we just would like you to take we're serious about this. This town needs affordable housing, and we think this project could provide some important housing and meet some of that need.
Now, I read your memo. Are you proposing a hybrid model then for this building?
I don't think our committee proposed any specific fix for this. I mean,
Or are you proposing that it be all multi-family and not
No,
student housing?
I think what we were stressing was that well, first of all, let me just say their HUD and the Federal Low Income Tax Credit Program define when a student is eligible for affordable housing. And other projects that have come before you that are multifamily have used one or the other of those criteria. The second issue concerns students who can be identified by financial aid at the university who are, or information could be given to those students who are in serious need. So we can't tell you, based upon your zoning regulations, we're not zoning experts, how you should define these units. But if there are 3-bedroom units, for example, 3 unrelated people under your regulations can live together in one unit. And I understand, so in those 3-bedroom units, I don't know how many they have, that might be an example of where you would have 3 students who are, who would meet a financial need requirement, who then could potentially rent that unit. And how, I think you have to discuss legally, and I wouldn't be prepared to do that, how you would then define the rent for that unit and what each student's proportional part of that would be. We don't know. I mean, we discussed with the applicant, I guess in other parts of the country, they are dealing with this issue about how to address affordability. And we don't have any specifics on that, but it might be worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is we feel the applicant needs, if anybody needs to solve this problem, it would be the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that'd like to speak? No one's called in, right? Okay. So why don't we go back to our,
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
believe the applicant has a chance to respond.
oh, yes.
Yep.
Well, I just thought I'd go through this. Yeah. Oh, well, let him do the public. Yeah.
Again, Tom Cody. So with respect to Mr. Hirsch and his comment and his question, would UConn allow grading on their property to improve sightlines? That's exactly what we are working on. And we don't have a resolution to that issue at the moment, but we have proposed a change to the ingress and egress from the building to be a right out only, so that you don't have to deal with the left turn question of the sightline. So we've proposed that to mitigate the sightline problem, but at the same time, having conversations with the university about potentially a more complicated solution of doing grading on their property, which would of course require their specific permission. With respect to the comments from Mr. Stern and Ms. Amdur, I would, I would simply just offer this one thought. The final comment that Ms. Amdur mentioned, I think highlights the problem. She suggested that if we had a 3-bedroom unit, that it could be rented to 3 students and therefore could become an affordable unit. But that statement highlights the exact problem that we're trying to communicate. The rent that would be charged would be the rent for the unit. And so if it's a 3-bedroom unit with 3 students, you take the affordable rent and divide it by 3. That is financially unsustainable. You cannot take the affordable rent, which is already perhaps less than market rate, and then divide it by 3 or 4 or 5. And then say that, well, then that bedroom is essentially paying really what would be less than the carrying cost, less than the operating cost of the unit itself. It would never get built because it would not be financially feasible.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I don't have an affordability question. I have this is a traffic question because we've heard this from other projects that are ongoing. And it really deals with the shuttle route. Do you own the shuttle route kind of like the coffee bars? Is that you? And I'm asking that because I don't know how many vans, is it like one van that just does this loop, or is it a bus, like a city bus like we see?
It would be a Sprinter type van,
Okay.
so something.
So kind of like
for
an airport van.
12 to that we would own.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, actually, we would look into it. We would either own it, or
Doesn't-
sometimes there's a company that does it as a contract service and you can arrange for it as an outside service. Sometimes we actually have to hire a commercial driver license person and staff it ourselves and buy the van ourselves. We haven't looked into it in that level of detail yet. We wanted to get through this process before doing that, but
you're
one of
hoping it will
those two-
reduce traffic because we're congested now, so it would bring down because you'd have 20 kids on a bus versus 20 cars driving around.
That's correct.
Yukon.
And that bus would go hourly, so
Oh,
for a 9-hour shift, so.
that's it. Yeah, I didn't know if it was one van, 20 vans. I didn't quite get the big buses, so.
Right, so it would be a
You
Sprinter type
answered it.
van 1 time per hour.
Okay, Binu.
And these vans is it only restricted to the residents or other students could use them as well? The private,
Right now, we've only considered allowing our own residents to ride that van. I'm not sure I would necessarily object to anyone else who wants to riding it. I don't think anybody would be there except for our residents, but
okay. And the question again, back to the affordable housing question, there was a comment that you do provide affordable housing in your other complexes across the country. Is that true? And if so, how are you handling that?
that is true. There have been other projects that Core Spaces has done where we have been forced to provide affordable housing on site. Usually in urban areas, an example that comes to mind is a project in Los Angeles where the rent is $7 per foot. And so in that specific case, we were able to make the finances work by raising the rent on everyone else. And the average rent in Los Angeles is already so high that we could actually do that. We don't think we can do that here. It's already a price sensitive market. And we don't think we can just offload that rent on everyone else. We won't, I don't think we'd rent the units out. It's a huge risk. One that we could take in Los Angeles, but I don't think we could take here.
And do you, your personal, I mean, in your calculations, is this 3.3 million fair? The payment in lieu? I know it's our regulation, but do you think it's a fair
I think it can be leveraged to create at least 45 affordable units if you use the appropriate low-income, federal tax credit programs for forgivable loans. I'm not an expert in this, but I do know affordable housing developers that can put together a capital stack of 80% of basically credits, incentives, grants, and then they only have a 20% financial gap to cover. You could use that $3.3 million to cover that gap. And so what I'm saying is that could be leveraged. $3.3 million doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it could be leveraged into the gap financing that would allow a $40 to $45 million project to happen that would have, 45 to 60 units. It's not our.
Now, an interesting thing about that leveraging, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you take that money and leverage it into a project like South Eagleville, where not all the units are affordable, still the entire complex is counted toward our affordable housing. So you can have 30% affordable housing and 100% of the housing qualifies for our numbers that we need. Is that correct?
I've heard that. I'd have to do some more fact checking on that, but Jolene is agreeing with me on that.
I
and-
have heard that from land
It's
use
just a bizarre
attorney as
part of the
well.
regulations. So, and you mentioned it in your report. And so I checked with some other people and I couldn't believe that that was true.
I think it's based on the type of funding, not if
Right, it has to be the CCHS, which is,
the
yeah.
CHAFA funding.
okay. The devil's in the details. Okay, if there's no other, yes, Larry, go ahead. You're muted. Still muted. Continue to be muted. Want to call us on the phone?
Oh, all right. Can you hear
There
me
you
now?
go. Yeah, well, now we can hear you.
All right. You had, someone had made the statement that you're already at less than market rate. I don't understand how you can be at less at market rate, charging $1,400 a bedroom. I'm a little bit familiar with the rental market in town.
I think what Tom was referring to is that if we set the affordable unit rents using the statutory calculation, then those units would already be at a less than market rate because they're set based on 80% of AMI. And then you divide that by the number of residents. So that could be 4 or 5. So you take that already less than market rate rent and divide it by a number, making it much smaller. And that is in essence the issue.
Why can't you just take the total? If it's a 3-bedroom, it would be $4,200. Why can't you just take the 4,200 and multiply it times the 80%?
In your packet, I included an email from Michael Santoro, one that I got a few weeks ago, and it talks about how the affordable rents are calculated. And there's a whole Excel spreadsheet that Michael has sent to you. I did a PDF of the spreadsheet, but basically you look at the fair market value, and I think the state tracks that, and then you look at the area median income and you do a percentage of that. So you can't just do like 4,200 and then have it be like 80% of that rent. Is that what you're asking, Larry?
It is.
Yeah, no, that you have to follow the Department of Housing guidelines.
And so what would the Department of Housing guidelines be on something, let's say a 3-bedroom at $1,400 a bedroom?
it's not rented by the bed, it's not calculated by the bedroom. That's the issue. It's a rent for the unit as a whole based on the AMI calculation for the family. You can't just take 3 times the 1-bedroom affordable number. That's what Mr. Santoro specifically said we cannot do.
Okay. Why don't we go through some of these highlighted questions from the staff? And some of these are just comments for ourselves, and some of them will be questions for the applicant. So the first one is that the commission will need to determine if the applicant is providing community amenities to the public that meet the regulations in Table 4. Okay, so that's something we talk amongst ourselves. Commission needs to determine if the applicant's providing adequate off-site connections and related improvements that meet the regulations defined in Table 4. That's something we need to discuss. And then there's the question of the affordable housing requirements, which we've been discussing. We'll continue to discuss next time. An interpretation of the regulations will need to be made, and a determination will need to be stated on the record if the commission determines that claiming both parking reductions for public and private transit is the intention of the regulations. So that's something we need to decide amongst ourselves. The applicant should highlight the locations of the electric vehicle spaces. We talked about that. A final snow storage plan should be submitted for approval by the zoning agent. So that's something that we could put in the final document. The commission needs to determine whether the design is acceptable or whether the sidewalk needs to be continued. We always have a sidewalk question every single time.
Yeah, I think maybe you could bring up the sidewalk plan, because that may have been modified since I made that comment, but if you could, I think my comment here relates to if the sidewalk goes along the full frontage, because originally I think you were saying that it was, you had some site constraints, but could you just show the commission where the sidewalks are and how you've incorporated them?
If you'd like, I could steal the screen and show our site plan if it's up. All right, so if you could let me know when you can see this, I can walk through the sidewalk layout.
What's up?
Yep, all right, great. So we're seeing site A here, and I'm going to quickly highlight the sidewalk routes for you in yellow here. So this is the North Eagleville frontage. I'm highlighting now with our pedestrian connections to the facility, and then along King Hill Road, proposing sidewalks along majority of the frontage over here, and then we have the connection along the eastern side of the property. Now, the North Eagleville Road frontage is highlighted in yellow here, and you can see we're providing our bus shelter up at the connected existing bus stop. There was previously a sidewalk extension that is now shown in blue here that has been removed from the application. And that was specifically raised as a comment in the traffic authority conversation. The difficulty with this sidewalk is directing pedestrians to a dead-end route. And the reason this is a dead-end route rather than a continuation to the west is because of the open channel portion of Eagleville Brook. And if you were to look at our grading and drainage plan, you'll see that there's a significant drop off from the side of the edge of roadway here. And if you look closely, you can see the detail. There's a metal beam guardrail, utility pole, some monitoring equipment and signage down a steep slope, rock embedment. So if we were to extend a sidewalk on this side of the right of way, it would require filling and effects to a water course and additional permitting and regulated areas through the public right of way, North Eagleville Road. And beyond that, there is a pedestrian access route on the north side of Eagleville Road that extends down and connects further down the roadway there. So as part of the traffic authority meeting, we had removed that sidewalk extension, encouraging pedestrians to walk in an easterly direction over to the intersection where they are connected and can cross with pedestrian facilities and access other portions of the connection of the campus, rather than dead ending at the edge of a sidewalk that goes nowhere, and then potentially encouraged to walk into the right of way where there is no pedestrian facility. The connection on the eastern side of the site goes up to the King Hill Road right of way. And from there, we can see we've got just about, say 80% coverage along the frontage here. And the reason we haven't extended it here, again, is due to grading and tree clearing and connectivity concerns. There are no facilities on this side of the property, and the newly developed property across the street of the university does have multi-use trail, and we have provided a crosswalk with sidewalk connections over to that, as well as the bus stop here. Then if we move over to site B, you can see we are proposing a sidewalk along the entire frontage of site B. We have maintained an existing connection to UConn's parking lot F, as well as that connection that I had just described on the north side of Eagleville Road as it continues down to the west there.
No application will be complete without a tiny missing piece of sidewalk. Okay, moving along. So for grading and excavation, applicant should be required to submit detailed responses to the information required in Article 10, Section H3 and H5 for review and approval. That's something.
A mistake, and it's referring to the prior zoning regulations, so I can correct that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay. Commission should require the applicant to submit a zoning permit application to merge the parcels. That sounds familiar. Inland wetlands license was granted, and the license included conditions of approval that must be satisfied prior to issuance of the zoning permit. Required turning radii. Is that how you pronounce? Is that the plural of radius?
I think so, yeah.
Radii. Fire hydrant and Knox box locations shall be reviewed by the Chief of Emergency Services. Certainly sounds like a good idea. We mentioned the solid waste. I think you had a memo about that. Oh, make sure that the recycling information is attributed to all residents and that trash recycle rooms have information posted so that all residents have proper recycling procedures. And I'm sure if you have 99.5% students, they will all comply to the letter of the posted regulations. Stormwater management. Conditions for approval related to stormwater cited in the wetlands application need to be noted as condition of approval for the special permit application. Applicant should be required to update to the housing plan to specifically identify a progressive enforcement response and identify how noise will be dealt with. And I think Avera brought up that question, late at night noise and who's going to supervise it.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Yeah, yes.
What is your provision for security at after hours? What's your plan?
So I actually have a clip from our lease language in my presentation that I could pull up, but I could actually just describe it. So it's basically a 4-strike policy. And so if there are noise complaints, the first strike is notice. And then there's fines to the point where at the 4th strike, there's possible eviction. And so all of this is handled by the property manager on duty at the time. And so that's how we basically control the noise and noise complaints in between units, as well as from units that might be adjacent to the property, which there are none in this case.
But your property managers are in business hours.
We do have the property managers that are on site during business hours. There are security staff that would be on site non-business hours, as well as the community concierge staff that would be on call and would actually have to respond to any noise complaints.
You already mentioned that you're going to have Energy Star certification. Can you have contractor parking on site or somehow controlled off site?
That's during construction.
During
right?
construction? Yeah.
I haven't really thought about that, to be honest with you.
Okay. All right.
I would need to consult with, we are talking to a few GCs. I would need to have
It's
some
a pretty
conversations with
tight
them.
space.
Right.
So you're probably going to have some kind of shuttle bus or something. Even the standard has trouble fitting the cars in there. Okay.
Well, one thing I just wanted to bring your attention to is the parking reductions, because that's something that's a little bit different that I think you all should, I tried to highlight that in my memo. It's going to require an interpretation from you, because if you read the excerpt on page 8, so the way the parking reductions work in the PB4 district is they are eligible for 75% for their residential, but the way they can take those credits it is different in the regulations, or it is in the regulations, but it's a little bit hard to kind of follow, I think. So basically, they are taking on one site 15%, and on the other site 10%, because they're located close to public transportation, which is fine. But then for private transit, it says vehicular parking requirements for residential uses that do not meet the locational requirements for public transit credits may be reduced where the owner commits to providing regular daily shuttle service to areas of employment activity such as Yukon, downtown stores, Four Corners, and other places. So it's not clear to me that you can use both the public and the private transit reductions. However, the applicant makes the argument that, the regulations may try to penalize an applicant for being close to public transportation. So it's just the way the regulations are written. So that's always a challenge, right? I mean, your regulations are not perfect, but if you're allowing someone to not come in for a text amendment and not follow the regulations, you just have to be careful about that. And so you would have to make an interpretation, and then that interpretation would be applicable to everyone in that PB4 zone.
Which is basically just themselves. Right.
Well, there are some others too, but so you'd have to just think, but you'd have to really think about that interpretation, and also have to check in with the town attorney.
Okay.
In the presentation, I had put together a slide that really clearly addresses this. And if you have time, I can explain our opinion on it. It's very clear.
Sure. So okay, let's see if I can do this here. Here and then zoom. And then
Hey there. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of expected to have these handy. There's an exhibit I put together that shows our opinion on this issue, and it kind of clearly shows what we're thinking. So we're talking about the private transit service, which this is a clip from the code that shows on the left right there, it says vehicular parking requirements for residential uses that do not meet the locational requirements for public transit. And so we believe that the intent of the code was not to penalize projects that would provide private transit in addition to being well located. And the reason why we think that is because if you look at the maximum reduction allowed, it says 50% in PB4 and I zones. That dotted circle is a 2,500 foot radius around the only PB4 land. And so all of it would qualify for the public transit, and therefore none of it would qualify for the private transit reduction if you interpreted it that way. Because all of the PB4 land is within 2,500 feet of a bus stop, which means that it qualifies for the public transit reduction and therefore would not qualify for the private transit reduction. And if that's the case, why do you limit it to 50% reduction for PB4 zone? That's why it seems to us that the intent was not to restrict the parking reduction to only sites that do not qualify for the public transit reduction.
I have a question for the traffic person. He hasn't had many questions. I'm going to give him a question.
Yes.
So we've had a lot of people complaining about traffic in the town, rightfully so. And I've lived in the town for 70 years. And back in the 50s, when the student population was 3,000 or 4,000 and families had one car and students had no cars, there weren't as many cars on 195. Now that we have 12,000 students living on campus, 19,000 living off campus and commuting into campus. We have a bigger staff. We have high school students with cars. Am I correct in saying that the traffic problem in Mansfield is caused by this increase in population of students and families driving more, and that a project which puts 1,000 people in the middle of campus would actually reduce those commuting cars coming into, could actually be a net benefit for traffic rather than making traffic worse?
Well, that's a pretty broad question that needs some greater analysis, but I can tell you just by inspection of the project, and one of the questions I was going over with my staff before I came here tonight was about the pedestrian accessibility to campus.
Mm-hmm.
The behaviors change over time. You're going all the way back to the 50s, but we are still very close to campus. Our expectation is that the pedestrian bike transit will be much higher than what we estimated in the traffic study.
You seem to be quite modest.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I've gone through similar projects where people challenged that, and so we try to be as conservative as possible to test the system.
Mm-hmm.
And when we tested the system, it worked fine. But in reality, I believe that there'll be a lot more pedestrian, a lot more non-auto traffic trips coming to and from this development. You also have the retail uses and other things that are on site that will, somewhat reduce, the desire to have to go too far afield to get what you need. But I agree with you that, I think, we have to be conservative when we do these analyses, but I do think that the actual, the location of these two buildings it's a prime location for bike and walking and transit.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from commission members? I think the plan is to keep this open.
Yes, I think you do want to have the benefit of just having everything buttoned up
Yeah.
from your peer reviewers. I think it should be pretty short next time, but they, I think it's in your best interest to make sure you have that final memo.
Okay. So we need a motion to what do we call it, or continue.
I did
Oh, it's in-
draft that
it's in-
motion,
okay.
and it's in your
I'll
packet.
be glad to put it forward.
Okay, thank you.
Board moves to continue the public hearing regarding a special permit application of Will Husky Housing LLC for a mixed-use development known as The Hub at Mansfield on 4 parcels located at 22 and 28-32 King Hill Road and 25 and 134 North Eagleville Road. Assessor's parcel IDs 15.33.3, 15.33.4, 15.33.5, and 9.2326. PZ file number P1381. To the October 2nd, 2023 regular hybrid meeting at 6:10 p.m. in the council chamber, AP Beck Municipal Building, 4 South Eagleville Road.
Moved by Ward,
Which will second?
second by Woods.
Have one, you might
Yeah.
want to change that. So you do have an inland wetlands agency meeting. So you might want to just change that to 6:05 so that
Okay.
you're not waiting around like you were
Okay,
tonight. Because
okay, 6:05. Okay with everyone? Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to seeing you.
Yep.
In a couple of weeks.
Okay, under old business, we have the matter of the special permit application of Yamai Development LLC for the villages at Four Corners. So this is when we would discuss this. Perhaps one possibility would be if someone wanted to make a motion and then we could discuss it after the motion. It's a rather lengthy motion. Who's got leather lungs tonight? Who's got wind?
You got the cough drops. You're ready.
He's got the cough drops. Binu volunteered. She volunteered. He's got the cough drops.
We do a page apiece.
No, the same person has to do the whole thing.
I don't mind doing it.
Okay, go ahead.
I, DeVivo, move to approve the special permit application of Yami Development LLC, applicant/owner, for a mixed-use development known as The Villages at Four Corners, located at 1659 Stores Road and 625 Middle Turnpike, assessor parcel ID 8.15.12 and 8.15.11, PZC file number 1379, as described in application materials and plans revised through 9/5/2023. This application was heard at a public hearing held on 9/5/2023. In approving this application, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered all public hearing testimony and communications and agreed to receive the revised information submitted by the applicant subsequent to the publication of the public hearing notice. Further, the commission has determined the following. This approval is granted because the applicant is considered to be in compliance with Article 5, Section B, and other provisions of the Mansfield zoning regulations with the following conditions. 1, extent of approval. This approval is specifically tied to the applicant's submission and the conditions cited in this motion. Unless modifications are specifically authorized, the proposed uses and site improvements shall be limited to those authorized by this approval. Any questions regarding authorized use required site improvements and conditions cited in this approval shall be reviewed with the zoning agent and director of planning and development, and as deemed necessary, the commission. 2, conditions to be met prior to issuance of zoning permit. A, the applicant shall update and clarify the residential parking table noted on page SP-0 of the site plans. The uploaded parking table shall be reviewed and approved by the Director of Planning and Development. If an interpretation regarding compliance is required by the director, the applicant shall be required to seek a determination from the Planning and Zoning Commission. B, a revised site plan shall be submitted indicating that residential and retail parking are clearly identified and signed. C, the applicant shall submit an updated affirmative fair housing marketing plan for review by the town's fair housing officer to ensure that units are marketed to those least likely to apply. D, the applicant shall submit and receive a zoning permit application to merge all of the parcels. E, the applicant shall provide documentation that Weston and Sampson's comments dated 8/11/2023 related to traffic have been submitted to the Connecticut Department of Transportation and the Office of State Traffic Authority. F, a revised site plan or demolition plan showing the removal or trimming of the trees within the limits of the intersection site triangle along Route 195 to the north of the site. Should the removal of trees result in a regulated activity pursuant to the town's inland wetlands and watercourse regulations, an inland wetlands license will be needed. G, the refuse and recycling plan shall be reviewed and approved by the Town of Mansfield Recycling Coordinator. H, that the hydrant locations, fire truck movement paths, the knock box location shall be reviewed and approved by the Chief of Emergency Services. I, the applicant/owner shall execute a stormwater management /BMP facilities maintenance agreement with the town and record said agreement on the land records. J, the applicant shall submit a plan of implementing the measures identified in Connecticut Department of Energy Environmental Protection, NDDB, determination number 2023-03453, dated 4/26/2023. Said plan shall be designed by a qualified herpetologist and shall be approved by the environmental planner before the beginning of construction. Construction documents shall be updated to include all relevant terms of the plan. Prior to the commencement of construction, all personnel shall be briefed on policies and procedures pertaining to it. Reports detailing any encounters or actions taken concerning state endangered species listed in the NDDB determination shall be submitted to the environmental planner for review and approval no less than once a month. K, the applicant shall submit detailed responses to the information required in Article 10, Section 8.3 and H.5 of the zoning regulations to the zoning enforcement agent for review and approval. If an interpretation regarding compliance is required by the zoning enforcement officer, the applicant shall be required to seek a determination from the Planning and Zoning Commission. L, pursuant to CGS 4B-77, the applicant shall submit revised plans confirming that 10% of the parking spaces are level 2 electrical vehicle charging stations, EVCS capable. Locations of said stations shall be shown. 3, conditions to be met prior to the issuance of the certificate of zoning compliance. A, snow storage. A revised detailed snow storage plan shall be approved by the Director of Planning and Development and the Assistant Town Engineer. If snow is being trucked off-site, information will need to be provided as to the disposal location. B, affordable housing. The applicant shall submit the final declaration of land use / restrictive covenants for approval by the town attorney for conforming with state regulations and affordable housing plan approved through this application. The declaration shall include a provision stating that the rental of the project units shall abide by the terms of the federal low income housing tax credit, LIHTC program, specifically IRC 44I3D, as it may be amended with respect to households comprised of students or another appropriate method of qualifying students. The declaration shall be recorded on the land records prior to the issuance of the certificate of compliance. C, landscaping. Changes to plant species identified in the approved landscaping plan shall be authorized by the zoning agent, provided such substitutions is comparable to the original specifications. Should the zoning agent need the assistance of a registered landscape architect to determine the suitability of the proposed substitution or substitutions, the zoning agent shall consult with the firm that provided a peer review of the landscaping plan, and the applicant shall be responsible for any cost associated with that consultation. Payment to the town for the cost of the consultation shall be made prior to issuance of a certificate of compliance. D, sidewalk. If such time the property located at 611 Middle Turnpike is developed, provided a wetlands license is issued and Connecticut DOT approval is obtained, the applicant and property owner shall be required to bear the cost of extending the sidewalk along the full frontage of the property. A guarantee approved by the town attorney of said requirement shall be filed on the land record. 4, contractor parking. All construction contractor parking shall be provided on site unless alternative locations are authorized by the commission. 5, wetlands license. All conditions of the inland wetlands license issued on 12/19/2022 shall be met. 6, revised site plans. Within 20 days from the date of the special permit application approval, the applicant shall submit one hard copy of signed stamped site plans, technical reports, and other relevant application material revised to 9/5/2023. Validity. This permit shall not become valid until the applicant obtains a special permit from the planning office and files it on the land records.
Moved by DeVivo. Thank you for reading that.
Second by Woods.
Second by Woods.
One quick thing.
One quick thing.
Yep, I had that. But on 2F, the sentence starts with a revised site plan or demolition plan. I think it should start with the applicant shall submit a revised site plan or demolition plan showing the removal or trimming of the trees.
Okay, that's okay.
That is okay with me
And Craig
as well.
Okay.
And
And
on page 4, the specifically IRC subsection 42I3D is maybe amended with the respect to the households.
Where are you?
and
It's on page 4, top.
Yeah.
and how important is shall and may and little substitutions? Is that okay?
So shall is they have to do it.
Yeah,
May is that they should do it. So it's important.
yes, so if it was not read correctly, is it okay to just follow what's in the written? Or should be corrected?
I think it needs to be corrected.
Where did
Okay.
I miss the shell?
In
Oh,
in J,
Shall say shall.
J, reports detailing any encounters. John read it as or, it's any encounters and actions. And then the determination, you read it as shall, it is determination will. Then There's another
Shall and will are the same.
Okay.
Shall and may are different.
landscaping, on page 4, landscaping, second line. Landscaping plan, it was read as shall, but here it is may be authorized. And then I just had a comment. E says, the applicant shall provide documentation that Weston and Sampson's comments dated 8/11. And in C for landscaping, we see zoning agent shall consult with the firm that provided a peer review of the landscaping plan. So should we be consistent and say consultant that provided something, and so Weston and Sampson's?
You can. I don't know that that's absolutely necessary. Specifically, the reason why we said Weston and Sampson's comments dated August 11th is that you want to make sure that the consultant's comments are actually submitted to OSTA. And then,
So should we say Weston and Sampson, the town's peer reviewer?
sure, yeah.
Right. And then the 2A, second line is uploaded, was read as uploaded.
Yeah.
Because,
Updated.
sorry.
John, you might lose your job reading.
I'm working hard.
You did a great job.
But really quick for you. So on 2A, the applicant shall update and clarify the residential parking table noted on page SP-0 of the site plans. F. I forgot what I was,
So we were gonna,
the applicant shall provide
Yeah.
a revised site plan or demolition plan showing the removal or trimming of the trees within the limits of the intersection site triangle along Route 195 to the north of the site. J, halfway down, reports detailing any encounters and actions taken concerning state endangered species listed in the NDDB. Determination will be submitted to the environmental planner for review and approval no less than once a month. 3C, under landscaping, changes to plant species identified in the approved landscaping plan may be authorized by the zoning agent, provided such substitution is comparable to the original specifications. Did I
Okay,
miss any
now,
others?
now we're perfect.
No, that's okay.
No, we want it to be perfect.
We want it to be,
Everything's okay with you, Craig?
Seconded as corrected.
Okay, very good. So, any discussion? Yes, Sarah.
Just want to clarify that I did watch the video
Okay,
of the hearing.
we missed you.
I missed you.
Well, I think we discussed this extensively the last time. Unless anyone feels an urgent need to say something else, we could move forward toward a vote. Do we need to do a poll?
I would do a roll. I
Roll,
would make
yeah.
sure that everyone documents it for the
Yes.
record.
Okay. So, aye or nay? We'll go in alphabetical order. Paul Aho, aye. Sarah Corsi,
Aye.
Dinu Chandy, John DeVivo,
aye.
Katie Frattoni,
Aye.
Larry Ross. I think that's a thumbs up.
Aye.
Okay. Bill Tomeko,
Aye.
Craig Wooch,
Aye.
Vera Ward.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously, 9-0. And we are done.
I did want to note one thing under communication and bills. The Affordable Housing Committee has been working diligently on looking at the fee in lieu, and they have come up with a calculation. I'm gonna just, if with your consensus, I will forward that over to the Reg Review Committee, and we can, you can consider that as part of a reg change.
Okay,
Well, which would not affect this the application we heard tonight, the public hearing.
That is correct. Yep.
we are adjourned at 9:20 PM. Phew.